All right, we are live now. Again, so welcome. Bible class, we're still going through the hard sayings of Jesus, and we've got 3 chapters to do in 2 weeks, so we'll see how we go. So again, looking at the hard words of Jesus this week, Mark 11:20-25, where Jesus says, we'll receive whatever we pray for as long as we believe. How about that? All right, so can someone read this for us?
As they passed by in the morning.
This is the day as Jesus and his disciples by Jerusalem.
What was that?
Yeah, Jesus and his disciples are near Jerusalem. This is during Holy Week.
Oh yeah. As they passed by in the morning, they saw the fig tree withered away to its roots. Peter remembered and said to him, Rabbi, look, the fig tree that you cursed has withered. Jesus answered him, have faith in God. Truly I say to you, whoever says to this mountain, be taken up and thrown into the sea, and does not doubt in his heart, but believes that what he says will come to pass, it will be done for him. Therefore I tell you, whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. And whenever you stand praying, forgive if you have anything against anyone, so that your Father also who is in heaven may forgive you your trespasses.
All right. So we've got the cursed fig tree. I forgot to double check. Oh, looks like right there. Yeah, kind of lived parable, which also kind of is sometimes looped or linked together with, people trying to say Jesus gets grumpy because, fig tree doesn't have any fruit, so he curses it and then it dies. Which could be another tangent we could go on, but we're focusing in on this. If you believe things and pray it in faith, then you'll get it. Name and claim, believe and achieve, all that fun stuff.
So was that safe for him to say, knowing that we told him faith lives up to it?
Right. Well, then we'll see. All right. And so one of the framing story that the author of the book uses in this chapter is the story of this guy, Louis Zamperini. Anyone familiar with this?
Yes.
So I'll
just before he was the Grand Marshal of the Rose Parade.
Died just before, right. Yep. So Olympian, World War II prisoner of war in Japan, and all sorts of things. But the reason he gets mentioned in this chapter is that after his bomber gets shot down in the Pacific and he's floating there for a while, he's not very religious at this point, but he finally gives up, floating in the middle Pacific, no hope of rescue, and says, fine, I'll pray that I'll get rescued. And he is. Like fairly soon after he says the prayer. And so that seems like a simple, cause-effect kind of thing. He finally prays in faith and then is rescued. So really, if he'd have just done that earlier, things would have been turned out differently, right?
Rescued by the wrong people.
But that's the catch, yes. So it didn't specify. I prayed for rescue, but I didn't specify. Pray for rescue by the Americans, or the British, not the Japanese. So. All right, so again, kind of thinking along those lines, is prayer merely cause and effect? I pray, God answers. And I just need to make sure that I have enough faith, just like, I've put enough money in the vending machine to make sure that I get what I want. Is that how prayer works?
Isn't cause and effect more you're cutting a deal?
Kind of right, and so that's what happens. How lots of other religions will interpret that. So, hey Edwin, can you quiet down a little bit, please? Thank you. All right. So is prayer merely cause and effect? That I say, he's upstairs, Jesse. All right. So is prayer merely cause and effect? Well, we've got a few examples in the Gospels where that isn't necessarily the case, because we have people asking Jesus for things all the time, and they don't always get the answer they want. So James and John, for example, ask for the places at Jesus' right and left. Well, or alternatively, sometimes it's their mom's involved. They don't get what they want. What's the reaction when that happens is, well, you don't know what you're asking for. You sure you really want this? And B, it's not my place to give it. And then all the other disciples get upset because they're thinking James and John are trying to build themselves up instead of, being good servant leaders.
Was that really a prayer?
Well, it's a request of God, a request of Jesus. So, which is one of the ways that I think we could talk about it, think about it that way. So, all right. So again, a lot of other cultures, that's often how God is treated. The surrounding nations of Israel, the pagan nations. Well, Baal, we need to pray to the rain god so we have rain, and so we're going to do certain things to make sure that we get rain, or the gods are angry with us, so we need to, offer a sacrifice of some variety, be it bird, cow, sheep, baby, and then the gods will care for us again. And of course, the problem is also then that in those other cultures, the way they're understanding these gods, like the Greek and Roman gods, they're very capricious. They're like humans, but with more power, which just doesn't really work out very well. So that's how lots of other cultures will treat the god as kind of I put in something, I get back what I want. But God, our understanding, God is not a genie, God is not a vending machine, so maybe not cause and effect, but request and outcome. A little different, slightly different nuance there. And we'll talk a bit about how that goes. All right? So in examples of this, I think we talked about this in men's study this week. So Abraham, if you remember, when the three visitors come and promise Abraham he's going to have a son, Isaac, Sarah's laughing off in the tent because he's like, come on, it's been 30 years. This isn't happening. But then after that part, God stays and talks with Abraham and says, I'm going to go destroy Sodom and Gomorrah because there aren't 50 righteous people in there. And then Abraham goes to work like a Middle Eastern carpet dealer, haggling. Well, what about 45? What about 40? And gets God down to 10. Now, of course, there aren't 10. There's at best 3 or 4 righteous people in Sodom, because we got Lot and his family. But you've got that request and outcome, that talking with God, and you also get God to sort of change his mind, or change how he's going to respond. Moses too. So Moses is up, getting up on Mount Sinai, getting the 10 Commandments. People of Israel get frustrated with waiting. Tell Aaron, hey, we need a God we can see. And he goes, well, great. We got all this gold we stole from Egypt. Let's make a golden calf and call it good. And then Moses comes down. Here's the party going on around the golden calf. Destroys the 10 Commandments. Burns the calf, makes them drink it, and then God's angry and says, okay, fine. Moses, I'm just going to start with you. Wipe everyone else out. They're not going to do anything. I'll start with you, Moses, and I'll rebuild my people that way. And Moses says, God, really? You shouldn't know. You're a God of mercy and compassion. Everyone's going to hate your name if they hear, oh, look, he brought his people out of slavery to Egypt so they could die in the desert. And so on like that. And so Moses is able to, intercede for the people on behalf, or intercede to God on behalf of the people of Israel, and God relents and spares them. So we've got that request and outcome. It doesn't necessarily happen, but someone makes a request and God answers it.
But none of those people, except for two, made it into the promised
Oh, right,
land.
yeah. Well, I mean, they do some other things along the way that just kind of reinforce that. But yes, yeah. Because you've only got
He did get rid of them, just not
right, just not all at once. It took 40 years because you've got. But that's after they've had multiple chances, including then they could have listened to Joshua and Caleb, who said, "Hey, there's these giant grapes. This is a great place to be," instead of the other 10 spies who go, "There's giants in the land. We can't handle that." So, all right. So again, reminder, how does God answer prayer? Yes, no, wait, or later. See, I'm glad the Lutheran Hour has these kind of graphics I can borrow, Gary. So, yeah. So how does God answer prayer? He answers prayers in 3 ways: yes, no, or later, or wait. Of course, the challenge for us is sometimes it's really hard to know the difference between no and wait. And then the other thing is trying to figure out why God's giving us that answer. Because sometimes we might just never know this side of heaven, why God answered our prayers that way, in a way that we don't, which isn't the way that we wanted them answered. Because he's not like a genie or a vending machine or something like that where they're trying to trick you. When Louis Zamperini prays for rescue, but he didn't specify who would rescue him. So obviously, this guy, trick. Well, I'll, deal with the devil. I'll rescue you, but it's the Japanese that are rescuing you, and so you get to go to one of their prison camps.
Well, this afternoon there'll be people praying the Cubs win. There'll be people praying that who are they playing?
Pirates.
What about
Both
the
can't
Nuggets?
win.
Right, or praying for the Nuggets or Timberwolves. Yeah.
It says in the Bible, God's ways are not our ways.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, God's ways are not our ways. His thoughts not our thoughts. God's got a bigger plan at work.
But doesn't that touch on spiritual growth and maturity?
I think that's part of it. And so part of what's going on with Jesus' response to his disciples is that it's not I tell the mountain to go and it's going to go because you're asking its faith. And partly because as a process of following Jesus and of praying to God, having that ongoing conversation relationship, your thoughts and ways will be changed and formed in a way that you will be asking for things that God wants to give you instead of asking for things that are just what you want. So.
Because, you may not know,
Right.
what I'm saying?
Yep.
As a child, you might have been instructed by your parents or everything.
Mm-hmm.
Put all your, in prayer, and then if you don't have that maturity guidance,
Yep.
every step of your life, you might do some
Yeah.
what people.
Well, even if you do have the maturity, you're probably going to mess up sometime. But yes,
That is
right. Every so often we act a little immaturely. So. All right. All right. So, but some examples of why we get that no or wait, or this one's kind of wait. Timing wasn't right. Jesus in John 2, first miracle. Mary says, Jesus. So again, this kind of request of Jesus, we can equate that to prayer. Mary says, "Hey, Jesus, they're out of wine. Can you do something about that?" And Jesus' reaction first is, "My hour has not yet come." This is not the right time. Although, of course, Jesus listens to mom and does it anyway. And it becomes, it's his first miracle. Yeah.
I always had a question about that. How did she know that he could do that or would do that? Did she see things as he was growing up?
Right. I mean, we get some apocryphal stories of Jesus doing miracles as a child. Whether there's one where he's playing in the clay and makes some birds. Some rabbi comes up to him and goes, "Say, hey, it's the Sabbath. You're not supposed to be making clay birds. You're breaking it." Jesus claps his hands. They become real birds, fly away. And Jesus goes, "What birds? There's no birds here." or he and his friends are playing on the roof, get a little rough. One of them falls off the roof and dies, and Jesus raises them back from the dead. Then there's the comic of Mary trying to give Jesus a bath and he can't go in the water because he's just standing on top. Or Jesus getting annoying his brothers because he can always make the free throws because he's perfect. No, we add extra stories about Jesus' childhood, and we're not really sure because we get Christmas, we get in the temple at 12, and then nothing till he's 30ish or so. But if nothing else, we do get told about all the Christmas things that Mary's treasuring all this stuff up in her heart. And so she knows at least something's up and something's going to happen eventually. So I think at least partly that's why she can ask him in faith. She may not know what he's going to do or how he's going to do it. But she knows he could do something about it. They're kind of like I don't know, you can tell every year when it gets around Christmas, people are getting stressed out and so argue about dumb things. Argue about whether Mary did you know that pop Christmas song, whether she actually knew all that. And I think the basic biblical idea is she knew the basic outline. She didn't necessarily know all the specific things that the verses get into in that. So I think that kind of goes, that she knew Jesus was special. She knew some things, didn't necessarily fully know or understand that. But yeah, no, good question. All right, so again, why does God answer prayers the way he does? Sometimes it's because the timing's not right. Sometimes it's because he's got something else going on, something else planned for us. We may not like it. Like Paul says, Paul prays to God, remove this thorn in the flesh from me. And God says, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. So then Paul says, well, therefore I'll boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so the power of Christ may rest on me. So God tells Paul no to this request, because he knows it's making Paul more dependent on him. Again, there's all sorts of questions and debates over what exactly the thorn in the flesh is. But whatever it is, Paul prays for it to be removed. It's not, but that's so Paul has to trust. Even Paul needs to remember that he needs to trust in God more. Because Paul does seem to have a humility problem at times. All right. Any thoughts on that? All right, and then how does Jesus want us to pray? He wants us to pray in faith, and he wants us to pray with forgiveness. And so that kind of circles back. The end of the Unbroken, the Louis Zamperini story, deals with him finally forgiving one of the Japanese guards that tortures him during his time in the prison camp. Like he starts out as a staunch atheist, or he just doesn't care. But he's very self-sufficient, self-dependent, and goes through all these things. And then part of his journey is becoming a Christian and realizing he needs to forgive this guard that had tortured him so much. And him being, I think he actually does get to meet the guard and before they die. But, so praying with faith and praying in forgiveness are how God wants us to pray. All right, discussion questions then. So what's your reaction to this idea of whether prayers cause an effect or request an outcome? Does that kind of help you make sense of things, of how we're supposed to go to God in prayer? Yeah, I'm seeing some head nodding. Okay, good. All right, have you struggled with God's timing in answering your prayers? Anyone have an example they want to share? And if not, that's fine. Yeah, Alan.
Our son-in-law is a pastor for ELS Synod, and he struggled with Lyme's disease for years. And he's really well liked by the congregations he shepherds, and they've given him a 6-month leave right now to try and get better, and he's prayed to God just like Paul. You would think that he would do something for him.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Lois.
Doesn't this whole thing kind of get back to the book of Job? Like those last 2 chapters in Job where God says, "Where are you when I created everything?"
Yeah, the last chapters of Job, where God essentially says, "I'm God, you're not," and deal with it.
And
Yeah,
that's,
which I think kind of goes along with that. Ultimately, yes, we're asking God, knowing that we're only seeing things from our perspective and God's got a different, bigger, better perspective. And so he's going to answer based on that, not necessarily on just our little perspective.
that answer will work for us because we are believers, but that's a really tough sell
Right.
for a non-believer.
Yeah, no, it can be. Yeah.
Throughout my life, I've had many struggles with answering of prayers, and that goes back to when I said it depends on your maturation, your maturity, and things of that nature. And being a heavy Christian as well, still having struggles because the human nature of everyone, you have doubt a lot of times. And not until I understood what you were talking, where you put the scripture up there about grace. It took me a while to understand that. Well, how can we have a loving God, grace, 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 and then all these bad things keep happening to me?
Right.
Think about that. Me. And then understand the whole premise of it. And so that's why I truly believe when I go out and I'm talking to someone that's struggling with something like that, I sit on the curb with them and I understand what they're going through because I went through it. Okay? And so it becomes so, because you told me to pray. You told me to pray. And I prayed and this person died or this person happened. I still got cancer and blah, blah, blah. I have nothing. And then they asked me for a response. I said, yes, you do. And they said, what? You have Jesus.
Yeah.
You have grace. And then their eyes open up.
Yeah.
And that should be our answer as Christians. To always remind them, you have that grace and you have God. He never leaves you. We talked about that today in the sermon. So, you have the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
So we can go home now.
Right.
What about that woman in the Bible that was persistent with prayer? And the disciples said, stop it or get away. And I just think persistent prayer is going to be answered.
Yeah, there's something to be said for persistent praying too. Jesus gives the parable of the persistent widow, who the judge finally gives justice to just to stop her from bothering him, and says, if this wicked judge can do that, don't you think God is going to do that better? Or that woman who's been praying to God for 13 years to have the blood flow removed and doesn't work until finally she goes up to touch Jesus' hem as he's trying to get to go raise someone from the dead, and she's just persistently finally says, I'm going to go touch him, and is healed. So yeah. Or think about the father of the prodigal son. How long did he pray before the son came back? All right. Have you been able to look back in hindsight and see God's wisdom in how a prayer was answered? Many times. Okay, good. Yeah. Yeah, that's something helpful, especially, you know, if you're thinking God never answers my prayers or thing, start writing them down. Writing down what your prayers are, what you're asking God for, and then kind of keep track of what the response was, and every so often look back and see how things have changed. Because we can sometimes, we see better in hindsight, but we can also sometimes forget what we've asked God for, or what our blessings are, things like that. So, all right. Again, God listened to the prayers of Abraham and Moses and spared sinful people. Well, I guess He didn't spare Sodom; He just at least rescued Lot and his family. So, what do these examples tell us about God's mercy?
Look at the thief on the cross.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah, that's another simple. Yeah, request prayer. You know, Lord Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And today we will be in paradise. So. Good. All right. And why does Jesus say forgiveness is an essential ingredient for prayer?
If you've got forgiveness, if you have forgiveness in your heart, and your heart's getting in the right place.
Yeah.
you put it in the Lord's Prayer.
Right. I mean, yeah, we talked about that earlier. Yeah, it's in the Lord's Prayer in the way that we teach that forgiveness is part of it. I think that's another thing that kind of goes along with prayer. I mean, we see that in the Lord's Prayer, and sometimes when I teach the confirmation kids about prayer, we use that acronym ACTS, ACTS. So what? Adoration, confession, thanksgiving, supplication. A lot of times we just think of prayer as the S, the supplication, asking God for things, but have those other things first, too.
This is also personal growth can happen because now your emotional well-being is healthy again.
Yeah. Well, and also kind of have that too with forgiveness or some of the prayers. Sometimes you may not get the answer you get, but if nothing else, doing that changes you, which changes things. You know, you may persistently praying, you may not always get the answer that you hoped for or wanted, but it'll change you. Forgiving someone as opposed to holding a grudge. What's the saying about that? It's holding a grudge. It's like drinking poison and hoping someone else dies. Doesn't quite work that way.
No.
So.
Does it humble you, and it makes me vulnerable.
Okay.
When I forgive someone that I cannot stand. I'll be honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it definitely does make you vulnerable. Yeah.
Well,
Yep.
it works.
It works. All right. And then one of the phrases towards the end of the chapter is, "You can't control what happens after you pray. The outcome is in God's hands." And how does that lack of control make you feel?
Like last week's.
Okay.
What'd you say?
Last week's, we were talking about, what we did last week, the study last week. That, it sounds like to
To
me.
be perfect.
To be
Yeah.
perfect,
Yep.
So,
But God's outcome is always for our benefit.
lack of control,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah. It's a big word that describes it. And the reason why I laugh is because someone said something unprofessional about someone that has control personalities, and I thought, wow, that's not Christian-like. And then, but I didn't, I try to be political about it. But anyway, that's here and there. But yeah, we do have those tendencies to want to be controlled. I don't know if it's because we love God so much or don't, You know what I mean? We're inspired to spread the word, and we don't know we're really smothering, or, that's what I'll keep it in a Christian type spirit. But, somebody else.
Yeah. No, I think there's, part of it is that if we have control, we think we have power over things. That helps, gives us a better sense of things, whereas if things are out of our control, sometimes that's a really hard place to be in. Recognizing that there's nothing you could do or could have done and might not ever know why the things happen, that kind of thing. Yeah. And that's the end of that. We have just 8 minutes, which isn't quite enough. Why don't we, hey Norm, can you open up, it should be in that Bible studies folder, the week 14 one. We'll at least start on that.
Yeah.
And it's sort of appropriate for Pentecost too. So we'll at least get into some of that and maybe circle back and finish it up next week, which will help us get through things a little quicker. So.
Pastor, you get political on this.
Oh, not at all.
Next week.
Well, I was going to say, yeah. I mean, Gary and I were talking a little bit about this topic earlier, so we'll see how this goes. Because Gary's never opinionated, so it works out. Yeah. Yeah, Al, do you have a question? Or?
I'm just curious, did the disciples use Babel in order to speak different languages?
They needed to. Well, I mean, maybe that's also an example of unanswered prayer. We hear this miracle of Pentecost, the disciples were able to speak in different languages. You can imagine how many seminarians have prayed for God for that miraculous knowledge of Greek or Hebrew. I think one of the admissions, I think it was the admissions guy at Fort Wayne, when I was going through, said something about you need Greek and Hebrew because if nothing else, it'll make you a praying man because you have to pray so hard to get through them. So it's at least important for preparation of being a pastor that way.
I have a question, maybe I didn't learn it in confirmation, but
Yeah.
on Pentecost Sunday is
Yes.
when, the languages,
Yeah.
okay, so Moses, back in his time, married an Ethiopian or a Cushite. Did she speak a different language? Was everyone on the same page until Pentecost, and then everything's...
So everyone was on the same page until Babel. That messed everything up. You've got people connected to each other that would have some different languages. So yeah, so Moses' later wife was a Cushite. Potentially they be able to speak Egyptian or something. Some of the international students that come here speak an incredible number of languages just because speak like the tribal dialect, the national language of their country. They'll speak English. They might speak like Chinese or something too. I mean, it's incredible, because what do you call someone who speaks only one language? American. Everyone else lots of other people speak multiple languages, and so there'd be some common language. I mean, that's part of why, the New Testament's written in Koine Greek, the common Greek. It was the trade language, so that's what they could use in other things. We used to pray for the Lutzes in Papua New Guinea. And there's a pidgin language, kind of a simplified thing that they could speak no matter, and everyone knew enough of that to do trading and stuff, as opposed to all the different little tribal languages that each little group would speak. And so we find things like that too.
So after you took Greek
Yes.
in the seminary,
Yes.
could you have a conversation in Greek with someone else?
No, not at all. Because the catch is we're learning Koine Greek, which was the Greek that was read and spoken 2,000 years ago. And part of my problem was in college, I learned Attic Greek, what Homer and Plato and those guys wrote in, which was 1,000 years earlier. But it's the equivalent of, if you read Beowulf in Old English, no one in the United States is really going to understand it. There's going to be a few words here and there, and it's But I mean, like even Shakespearean English to now, 500 years difference is a vast change. So, yeah. So no, we learned how to read and write, not speak it too much. So, all right. So again, a couple minutes, we'll just start off. What are we looking at? Is Jesus sexist and racist? And did he call a woman a dog? So, from there, Jesus arose and went away to the region of Tyre and Sidon, and he entered a house and did not want anyone to know, yet he could not be hidden. So this is maybe, again, part of what's going on. Jesus is tired. But immediately a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit heard of him and came and fell down at his feet. Now the woman was a Gentile, a Syrophoenician by birth, and she begged him to cast the demon out of her daughter. And he said to her, "Let the children be fed first, for it's not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs." And she said, "Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs." Then he said to her, "For this statement you may go your way, the demon has left your daughter." And she went home and found the child lying in bed and the demon gone. All right. So, Jesus calls the Syrophoenician woman a dog. We'll just skim quick and then we'll circle back and dig in deeper next week. But so, is Jesus sexist? Well, no, he values women throughout his ministry. A few examples include the woman at the well. Again, she's coming at noon to avoid everyone else. And his disciples are wondering, "Jesus, what the heck are you doing talking to this Samaritan woman at the well?" Mary, the mother of Jesus, we look at sometimes, Jesus says, "Woman, my time has not come," or, those sorts of things, but he still honors and respects his mother. At the cross says, "Okay, woman, behold your son, son, behold your mother." Make sure she's taken care of. Mary Magdalene, there's all sorts of extra stuff we've added that gets added about Mary Magdalene, but again, the fact that this woman who'd had 7 demons follows Jesus around, and Jesus helps and helps Jesus in his ministry is fine. Woman accused of adultery, go. Okay, no, I don't accuse you. No one else does, but go and sin no more. Doesn't point out the fact that probably should have been 2 people caught in adultery, and he only gets 1. So, and then is Jesus racist? Again, this is the Pentecost thing. No, he reaches out to people of all nationalities and tells his disciples to do the same. Because who are the first people, or among the first people that come and see Jesus? Shepherds. And after the shepherds is wise men. Are the wise men Jewish? No. They're from the east. We see them. So we've got Gentiles coming, being involved. We can find God's mission to Gentiles throughout the Old Testament, but this is where, beginning in the New Testament, we've got this going on at the very beginning, at Christmas, and we can even go further back and go into Matthew begins with the genealogy, which includes Rahab, Ruth, Tamar, Bathsheba, women and Gentiles in there too.
So, Pastor,
Yes.
how would they reword those 2 questions back in context to the period of time? Because those 2 are more modern type.
Right.
The first thing I think of, who's asking a question,
Yeah.
why are you doing this? You know what I mean?
Right.
Because it doesn't even compute.
Again, the idea of
I know what it's
race and culture are certainly different at that point. Most cultures, if nothing else, were similar to the Jews. You have the Jews and Gentiles. You have the people and the not our people. Everyone's divided into two groups. You're either in our group or you're not in our group. However way you do it, and then you put in hierarchies within the group. So that's part of what would be going on in that way, and the fact that Jesus is trying to get beyond that, again, some of that's more modern stuff. Although we keep trying to go back and find things other ways too. Find reasons. We keep finding reasons to divide ourselves.
But there's really only two kinds of people, believers and
And so that's how we get to that point now, yeah. Well, yeah, believers and either not believers or at least not yet believers, maybe. So, again, I think one or two more slides quick and then we'll go. Again, if Jesus doesn't like people from other nations, why does he tell his disciples, make disciples of all nations, and then at ascension, says, when the Holy Spirit comes on you, you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth. So you've got everything going on. All right, so we'll go on from there next week as we remember looking at this hard saying of Jesus, and we'll try and finish up this series next week, because then once we get into our summer sermon series is kind of stories from Sunday school that don't usually make the lectionary, don't usually make what we hear in church on Sunday, and so our Bible classes will focus in on those as we go through too.
Sounds good.
So, all right, thank you very much for coming.
Usually.